You wake up with a scratchy throat. Your head feels heavy and dull. Without even thinking about it, you reach for a glass of water. Maybe a pill from the cabinet. Maybe your phone to search your symptoms. It feels automatic, like your body already knows the routine. But the real story behind that routine is far stranger than anything sitting in your medicine cabinet. Long before pharmacies, long before doctors, long before a single word was ever written down, something else was already happening. Sickness existed. And somehow, without labs, without textbooks, without anyone to explain germs or chemistry, your ancestors were already finding ways to feel better. How is that even possible? The answer doesn't start with humans at all. It starts with chimpanzees. In the forests of Tanzania, researcher Michael Huffman spent years watching chimpanzees do something strange. When they felt sick, especially with stomach pain from parasites, they would walk past their normal food. Instead, they'd seek out a specific plant called vernonia, a bitter shrub they otherwise avoided entirely. They'd chew the pith, swallow the bitter juice, and within a day, their symptoms would ease. The plant contained natural compounds that killed intestinal parasites. The chimps weren't guessing. They were self-medicating. Huffman documented another behavior too. Some chimpanzees would swallow whole, rough leaves, folded, but not chewed. These leaves passed through their digestive system largely intact, physically scraping out parasites along the way like a natural broom. Two completely different strategies, one chemical and one physical, both aimed at the exact same problem, and both performed by an animal with no concept of parasites at all. Other animals do something similar in their own way. Elephants and parrots are known to eat clay, which can bind toxins in the gut and ease an upset stomach. Humans have done this too, across cultures and continents, often for reasons that line up almost perfectly with the chemistry involved, long before anyone understood what that chemistry was. This kind of behavior even has a name. Scientists call it zoopharmacognosy, which simply means animals using natural substances as medicine. And if chimpanzees, your closest living relatives, can do this, what does that tell you about the minds that came before your own? It tells you that the instinct to seek out something specific when you're sick might be older than humanity itself. Now fast forward. Hundreds of thousands of years pass. Early humans and Neanderthals are living across Europe and Asia, surviving harsh winters, hunting large animals, and dealing with injuries that would be fatal without help. And here's where it gets stranger. At a cave in Spain called El Cidrón, researcher Karen Hardy and her team studied something most people would walk right past: dental plaque. Hardened, fossilized dental plaque scraped from the teeth of Neanderthals who died around 50,000 years ago. Inside that plaque, they found microscopic traces of plants. Not food plants. Medicine. One of those plants was poplar bark. Poplar bark contains salicylic acid, the same compound found in aspirin. Another plant they found traces of was chamomile, a plant with almost no nutritional value but well known today for reducing inflammation. One individual studied by Hardy's team appears to have had a painful dental abscess and a parasitic gut infection. In that same individual's plaque, both poplar bark and what may be a natural antibiotic mold were found. Think about that for a moment. A Neanderthal, tens of thousands of years before the word medicine existed, may have been self-treating a toothache and an infection with two of the same basic categories of compounds still used in pharmacies today. He didn't know what salicylic acid was. He didn't know what bacteria were, but somehow he knew what worked. So how does someone learn that without ever understanding why it works? The answer is trial, observation, and time. An immense amount of time. If a plant eases pain, someone notices. If a plant calms a stomach, someone remembers. And if that knowledge gets passed from one person to the next, generation after generation, it builds into something that looks, from the outside, almost like science. Except it isn't built on theory. It's built on practice repeated for tens of thousands of years. Across nearly every culture in history, there has been some version of a role built around exactly this: a healer, a medicine person, someone whose job was to remember which plants worked, which rituals brought comfort, and which combinations had been tested again and again on real people with real symptoms. Long before universities, before written records, this was how medical knowledge survived. Not in books, but in memory. carried forward by people whose entire purpose was to hold on to it. This pattern doesn't stop with Neanderthals. It shows up again dramatically in one of the most famous bodies ever discovered. In 1991, hikers found a body preserved in ice high in the Alps. Researchers later named him Otzi, and he had been frozen for over 5,000 years. When scientists examined what he was carrying, they found something unexpected tucked into a pouch. 2 pieces of birch polypore, a type of fungus that grows on tree bark. Birch polypore isn't food. It's bitter and tough, but it contains compounds with antibacterial and antiparasitic properties. And when researchers examined Otzi's intestines, they found he was infected with whipworm, a parasite that causes abdominal pain. He appears to have been carrying his own medicine, just in case the parasite flared up again. But Otzi's body held one more clue. Across his skin, researchers found over 60 tattoos. Not decorative symbols. Most were simple lines and crosses, placed at joints affected by arthritis, on his lower back, his knees, his ankles. The exact places where his body likely hurt the most. Some researchers believe these marks may have been an early form of pain treatment, possibly similar in concept to acupuncture, applied directly to points of chronic pain. A 5,000-year-old man marking his own body in the exact places it ached. And medicine, it turns out, was never only about plants and fungi. At a cave site in present-day Iraq, archaeologists found the remains of a Neanderthal who had suffered a severe injury decades before he died, possibly the loss of an arm. Healed bone shows he survived that injury, and others for years afterward. An injury like that would have made it nearly impossible to hunt or fully care for himself. Yet, he lived on. Someone fed him, someone protected him, someone in some form looked after him for years. Medicine, it seems, was never just chemistry. It was community. So if your ancestors were treating infections, pain, and parasites this far back, were they also trying to avoid getting sick in the first place? It turns out, yes. And this is where things get personal, because this part of ancient medicine is still running inside you right now. Psychologist Mark Schaller has spent years studying what he calls the behavioral immune system. It's the idea that long before your actual immune system kicks in to fight a pathogen, your brain has already tried to keep that pathogen away from you in the first place. And it does this through one specific emotion: disgust. Think about the things that disgust you most: spoiled food, open wounds, bodily fluids, someone coughing without covering their mouth. These reactions feel automatic, almost involuntary, because they are. Schaller's research suggests this system evolved specifically to make you avoid sources of infection before they ever reach you. Disgust isn't just an emotion. It's an ancient alarm system, and it goes even further. Some research on early human social behavior suggests that even basic spacing, the instinct to put distance between yourself and someone visibly ill, may be far older than written history. Long before anyone understood contagion, avoidance behavior was already protecting groups from outbreaks. There's another layer to this too. When you're sick, you don't just crave certain foods. You lose your appetite for others. You feel exhausted, and all you want to do is curl up and do nothing. This isn't weakness. It's strategy. It's your body redirecting energy away from movement and digestion and toward fighting off whatever is making you sick. Animals across the animal kingdom show this same pattern, often called sickness behavior, shaped by the same evolutionary pressures that shaped everything else here. So here's the strange part. When you flinch away from someone sneezing on a crowded train, when you wrinkle your nose at a smell that signals decay, when you crave bland, simple foods the moment your stomach turns, none of that is new. None of that is learned from a textbook. It's a layer of behavior shaped over millions of years, sitting quietly underneath your modern habits. Even the things you crave when you're sick might echo this pattern. Many people instinctively reach for bitter teas, citrus, or ginger, which are, ironically, some of the same categories of plants used by chimpanzees, Neanderthals, and ancient humans for the exact same purpose. Your taste preferences shift when you're ill, and that shift isn't random. It may be your body nudging you toward compounds that have helped for longer than anyone can trace. This connection between ancient plant knowledge and modern medicine isn't just poetic, it's literal. A large share of modern pharmaceutical compounds were first identified by studying plants long used in traditional medicine around the world. Aspirin's active ingredient, for example, was first isolated from willow bark, a plant healers had relied on for pain relief for centuries before any chemist understood why it worked. The chemistry came later. The practical knowledge came first, passed down through generations of observation alone. Even the act of receiving care can change how your body responds. Researcher Ted Kapchuk has spent decades studying what's known as the placebo effect, and his work shows that the ritual of treatment itself, the ceremony of being cared for, can ease symptoms and trigger real physiological changes, even when the substance involved has no direct effect of its own. Ancient healers, knowingly or not, may have been tapping into this same mechanism every time they performed a ritual alongside a remedy. Open your own medicine cabinet, and you'll likely find traces of this ancient pharmacy without even realizing it. Honey, used for thousands of years to dress wounds because of its natural antibacterial properties. Ginger, used across cultures for nausea long before anyone identified the compounds responsible. Even the willow bark-derived aspirin sitting in a small bottle doing exactly what tree bark did for a Neanderthal with a toothache 50,000 years ago. The packaging changed. The ingredients in many cases didn't. So the next time you feel that scratchy throat coming on and your hand moves toward the cabinet almost on its own, pause for a second. That motion isn't really about the cabinet at all. It's a habit passed down through hundreds of thousands of years, refined long before pharmacies, long before doctors, long before anyone had a word for medicine at all.